Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, analysis, ranting, raving, screaming, yelling, all the above. I am one of your hosts, Tommy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We just finished a, 30-minute discussion before recording about what we think the Packers roster is like.
Yeah, 30-minute discussion on whether or not some of the third-round picks we've taken have been good, bad, or medium.
Packers third rounders.
Hey, Sean Ryan and Tucker Kraft. You know, they're both playing pretty good. But anyway, we are here today to break down, a game that in some ways didn't matter, and a game that at the same time was incredibly frustrating and incredibly disappointing. So a bit of a tough one to analyze, in my opinion, because it's hard to have a lot of takeaways, but it was still a very disappointing game. That's right. We are here today to break down the Packers' 24-22 loss to the Chicago Bears. Packers fall to 11-6 on the season, locked into the 7 seed. We'll be playing the Eagles later this week, first round of the playoffs. Check out here. We'll be doing a preview for that one later this week, but we'll be focusing on this game for now. Packers fall to 11-6, like I said, 1-5 in the division. Really tough game for Green Bay, really disappointing, kind of an unmitigated disaster in a lot of ways. Let's start though with, just some injury updates and news from this game, and then we'll get into talking about it. The first is that Christian Watson, that's the big one, torn ACL, which really sucks for him as he's going into a contract year next year. Sounds like per Ian Rappaport, there might be additional damage as well. Out for the season, and also 2025 in jeopardy for him. So we'll see if
at least a good chunk of it.
Yeah, he probably will miss at least the start of 2025, maybe longer. Hoping for a speedy recovery for him, because that really sucks. He was probably having his best year of his career to date. And that's just awful for him and the Packers. Next one is Jordan Love, who had an elbow injury in this game, was forced to leave this game. Now, Matt LaFleur did say they held him out as a precaution, but also Love said postgame that he still did not have any feeling in his throwing hand yet. So that's not great. That's going to be one to keep an eye on this week, as we still don't know his availability yet as we record this on Tuesday, January 7th in the afternoon. Rappaport did say that they got some good news on him Monday morning, but we still don't know the extent of it. That's just going to have to be one to keep our eye on. And then later this week, we heard about Marshawn Lloyd, officially out for the year per Tom Silverstein. It's actually not his appendix. He re-aggravated his hamstring injury trying to return, and he is being sent to UW-Madison to have, a bunch of the same work done that both Eric Stokes and Watson had over the offseason, to have their hamstrings looked at, measured, et cetera, et cetera. But Dad, any thoughts? Obviously sucks on Watson, obviously scary for Love. Any thoughts on any of those?
So also, like, Malik Willis hurt his thumb or something late in the game.
That's
another.
And I
was going to say about Love, you saw him starting to warm up on the sideline, like, I might have to go back in.
Yeah, he was warming up, but he still was
throwing the ball.
He was still shaking his hand out like he couldn't feel it.
Like, what's going on with his pinky?
Yeah, it's like
so
hard to know.
Yeah. Now, we didn't have a 4-alarm fire of the Packers grabbing Daniel Jones off of the Vikings practice squad.
No, we didn't have that
before the Vikings signed him to their 53-man roster.
The thing with Love, though, is the nerve stuff is always so scary to me. Like, any kind of nerve injury thing, any kind of anything with the throwing arm, scary. Like, grip strength is so important for the nerve stuff. Like, anytime anything on the throwing arm is in any kind of danger, it's just a scary thing. And we're just going to have to see this week. I would imagine he's going to be limited if he's able to practice at all. So
I'm hoping that it's already recovered. It's just like he really get his funny bone. I hope it was numb for the rest of the day, and now it's fine.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm just going to keep chanting that mantra.
Yeah,
for the next couple of days.
We're going to have to hope. What's-it-called? This is very similar. I think Brock Purdy had a similar injury that held him out for a week this past week. But to be fair, it was week 18 and their season was done, so maybe there was some circumstances there as well. But yeah, just going to have to keep an eye on that. Obviously, hoping for the best for Watson. That's the big one. And keeping an eye on that Love one. But Dad, let's start to talking about this game. Let's start with gut reactions. How did you feel about this game? Because it is it's weird because, and on one hand, it didn't matter because Washington won. You were the 7th seed anyway. On the other hand, it was incredibly frustrating and disappointing in so many different ways, and was in a lot of ways an unmitigated disaster of a game.
Yeah, so this is going to be totally unscripted since I forgot to put anything in here. So I'll get a how you feel gut check. Is it was just such a blown game. This is a game they had won in multiple ways. They should have won this easily, and it's just another one where they kind of blew it, where they should have had it. That's how I felt during the game, and I was frustrated. It's like, okay, oh wait, now Washington's losing. This might actually matter. And it didn't in the end, but while the Packers were playing, it seemed like it could, which was one of the more frustrating things about it at the time. And it's like they went halfway in.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people say
I've seen a lot of people say something similar where it's like you didn't it looked like you kind of wanted to win but also kind of didn't. You started Josh Jacobs and then you pulled him out. Someone pointed out that you pulled Kenny Clark out but then you brought him in on the last drive because you suddenly wanted to win, and it didn't seem like there was any kind of cohesion. And my gut check was less about the you had it and then you let it go. Mine was just like, you have no momentum going into the playoffs. You're 0-2 in your last two playoff games. Or sorry, you're 0-2 in your last two games. You have played one good quarter of football in your last 8 quarters of football, right? Is that fair to say? The fourth quarter against the Vikings is the only bit of football that you've played well in the last 8 quarters. You have no momentum. You have no rhythm. You're nursing injuries now, which is its own separate thing. But I was less about the result of this game and more just like, you haven't played good football in 3 weeks, and once the next game starts, it'll be almost a month since you played a good game of football. Like, that's what I'm worried about, is there's just no rhythm or momentum or, good vibes at all around the team right now as they go into this, playoff stint.
Yeah, and the fact that you finished the year 1-5 in the division,
and your only win on a block kick.
Yeah,
that's pretty
rough.
Gnarly. That's pretty gnarly. But I'm not even as concerned about that as I am just like, just no rhythm, no whatever. Oh yeah, my other gut check was just what the absolute what was the coaching doing in this game? And people who think Matt LaFleur should be fired, frankly, I think just like aren't paying attention and want to be mad about something. That's just not going to happen, and nor should it happen. It's a silly take in my opinion. But the coaching in this game was a disaster. We can start talking about this game more, but we can talk a little bit. We can chill out in gut reaction because I think it's more, there's not a whole lot, in my opinion, analytically to take away from this game. Once, Malik Willis comes in and, you're just kind of treading water, and I feel like just trying to get to the next game until you aren't. And but just gut check wise, like, what the hell was the coaching in this game before we get to, offense, defense, special teams? I mean, play calling all over the place. You run an end around on 4th and 3, which is ridiculous. You call a timeout with 58 seconds left, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. Like, what the F are we doing? Jeff Hafley, why are we playing Hail Mary coverage up 2 with 15 seconds left? Why are we pretending like we're up 5? Like we're just giving away 3 points? I'm like, do we just want to play Philadelphia in the first round? Like, what? Like, what is this play call? Like, this is tanking. Like, if you had a bad record and you were out of the playoffs, you would get accused of tanking with that play call. Like, they'd be like, oh, they want a better draft pick. It's like, no. We just didn't line. And they called timeout before too. And then Rich Bisaccia, I mean, how is no one coached to get eyes on the football on punt coverage? What is going on there? And don't even get me started on Matt Orzik just snapping disaster class again. Almost throws it over Whelan's head on the first snap of the game.
That was almost a disaster right there to start off the game. Yeah,
so all 3 of the play callers, the only guy who kind of gets off scot-free is Adam Stenovich, but hey, he's part of the problem. But all the play callers were terrible in this game, and I think most of them, even Bisaccia, have coached pretty well this year. But yeah, it was just a terrible game from all 3 coaches. It was my other gut reaction to this one.
Yeah, it's kind of, some of it was mind-boggling. It's like, this is basic stuff.
The call at the end of the game on the defense was the big one for me. I'm like you're designing a play to lose. Like, you're designing a play that you want to lose the game.
For me, the most egregious was the timeout by LaFleur with 58 seconds left. And I'm going to talk about that more later, because that one absolutely drove me nuts.
Well, run it through us now. Let's talk about it since we've already mentioned it twice.
Okay, so
just talk about what that situation was for people who, didn't have their eyes on the end of this game.
This is one of my bad things for the offense. This is the whole clock management on that last Green Bay possession. I feel like this may have been one of the worst series of coaching decisions by LaFleur ever.
Yeah.
Green Bay gets the ball at the Chicago 43 after the fumble recovery. With 1:49 left, Green Bay has all 3 timeouts. Chicago only has 1. Now, there's no need to hurry up here with 3 timeouts. Green Bay has plenty of time to run all the plays they want to get closer for a field goal attempt. The only argument I could ever see here was, if you failed, you could get a second shot at it if you hold on to 3 timeouts. We'll get back to that, which is a kind of a wild scenario. After the first down pass to Malik Heath, Green Bay is already in field goal range now at the Chicago 37 with 1:40 left.
I will say 55, that's a 55-yard field goal. So you're kind of in field goal range because it was very windy and it was outdoors. So that's like right on the border of field goal range.
Right. But they've got 1:40 left, and they snapped the ball with 20 seconds left on a running clock.
Yeah, on the 20 seconds on the play clock.
29 seconds left on the play clock. They could have run another easily 20 seconds off the clock. 1:40 left. They got 3 timeouts. So if they run it down, they can still get plenty of plays. And it's like 2nd and 5. Second down, run ends at 1:25 left. Chicago 35. At this point, they should be already planning to use all the clock in case they don't make the first down. They should be running it down.
Yeah. If
they do, they still have 3 timeouts. So if they get the first down, they still have 3 timeouts to get any kind of set of plays they want. If they run it down to under a minute. Instead, they snap it with 20 seconds left on the play clock. So they could have run it down to like 40 seconds, 45
there
seconds.
There is no scenario with over a minute left and 3 timeouts and only needing a field goal that you're ever going to run out of time. There is a 0% chance that you are going to run out of time where you only need about 10 more yards for a very comfortable field goal. There is never going to be a scenario where you run out of time in that situation. So you should be running as much clock as possible. You do not want another possession in this game. There's no scenario where you're going to run out of time. Like, why is there a rush?
They've got, you run down a minute and 3 timeouts to gain, 10 to 20 yards.
Yeah. You're playing like you need a touchdown.
Crap ton of time.
Yeah.
You're playing like you need a touchdown. You're on your own 30.
Yeah.
It's how they're running the clock here. Then they lose 2 on third. And then LaFleur calls a timeout instantaneously at 58 seconds, as soon as the play is done. Chicago probably would have called their own timeout rather than let Green Bay run it down. They could have run it down to 18 seconds if Chicago doesn't call a timeout. Then, the game's basically over. But Chicago probably would have called timeout rather than let them kick a field goal attempt
but you make Chicago use their
last timeout. But then Chicago
timeout.
would have used their timeout and not had it, which they needed on the last possession.
Exactly.
So why is LaFleur even making this knee-jerk timeout call? As soon as the tackle happens, it's not like he thought about it for a second. Oh, wait, I got to call him to figure out what I'm going to do. They should have already had the decision. We're not going to call timeout after that play.
And here's the thing. So yes, they shouldn't have even called the timeout because the scenario is it's 4th and 4. It sounds like he was waffling between going for it and kicking the field goal.
You got time to waffle.
Well, here's the thing. So scenario 1, you go for it and you don't get it. If you had used the timeout, you just lose. If you had not used the timeout, you have 3 timeouts to get the ball back.
Right.
Let's say
that's the other scenario. If you argue that they are running the plays quickly to save clock so they can use the 3 timeouts and get the ball back one more time after this one if they miss the field goal. But that doesn't work if you blow the timeout.
Exactly. And the other argument is you use the timeout to really make sure you get the decision right. Okay, but once you have decided to use the timeout, you can no longer really get the ball back if you don't get it. So you want the minimum amount of time left. So run the play clock down and then call timeout if you wanted to call a timeout to really decide. There's no scenario where calling the timeout right away is the right decision. And he said as much after the game, but that was just that lost them the game. Like that
it gave them time to, otherwise they wouldn't have had time. He could have run it down to 30 and then called a timeout. And then if you decide to go for it on 4th, you have 2 more timeouts to run a bunch of plays.
If you were to get it. Yes, if you were to get the 4th down. And once you've already called the timeout, you've already essentially established this is going to be your last possession of the game.
Yes.
Like that's the other things. Like when you called that timeout, you decided this is our last possession of the game. We are going to either, make this field goal or miss and lose. Like once that timeout's called, you no longer have control over like getting the ball back. So once you've done that, and once you've done that and you've made that decision that this is the last possession you're going to get, you want the other team to have the least amount of time they can get. So you run the play clock all the way down. And we don't need to talk about this anymore. Let's start talking about other things that made us angry in this game. But let's first talk about the biggest moment of the game, which was that 18-yard completion by Chicago on 3rd and 11 to set up the game-winning field goal, changed the win percentage from an 81.2% chance of Green Bay winning to a 56.8% chance of Chicago winning, change of 38%, and then the field goal itself changed it to a 36.8% chance of Green Bay winning. But yeah, so it was It was not good. I have no idea what the defense was doing there. But let's start with more stuff from the offense, Dad. And let's keep talking about some bad things. Just no rhythm in the passing game, which was really disappointing because we talked about it coming into this game where this was going to be a good opportunity against a team that struggled to defend the quick game, against a team that was reeling, against a team that had lost 10 straight. 10 straight, and you were trying to make it 11. And
trying to make it 12 straight to the Packers
in the division. And this is Matt LaFleur's first loss to Chicago also. But just no rhythm in the passing game at all. It did at times, I think, feel like Love was a little bit gun shy, but the stats don't necessarily bear that out. So that's kind of something that I'm interested in. So his tight window percentage, which is just a measure of, how many times he's throwing into a very tight window, was the fourth highest and fifth highest the past 2 weeks for him on the season. So like he's been throwing into tight windows more often the last 2 weeks. So that kind of, maybe says he's not being as gun shy. These guys just aren't as open. And then so he's forced to second react and throw quick. But even when Love was in, I felt like the passing game was disjointed. He definitely passed up a couple of throws that I thought he could have made. He left a couple short. The one to Musgrave, though, rewatching it, he's getting chopped down at the legs as he throws it, so that one wasn't as bad, but he missed a check down to Brooks short, I believe it was. He missed a...
was the one to Musgrave the third down just before they gave up the punt return touchdown?
I cannot remember. That was the one they had to challenge because replay assist just decided they are stupid.
What was up with that? It was called good on the field. Replay assist jumps in and changes it to the wrong call.
Yeah, and you look and you're like, wait a minute. Why do we have to use Why do we have to use a challenge? Because did replay assist even watch the angles? Like it never touched the ground. I don't understand that. But it doesn't matter. They ended up getting it. But yeah. So that underthrow I think was more just about him getting chopped down by the legs. I thought the line was not good in this game. Walker specifically, and at least on the snaps that Love was in. But he still seemed a little bit off. Seemed a little bit times where he was just a little bit hesitant to throw, but like we mentioned, he's thrown into tight windows a lot, so maybe he's right to hold the ball. I don't know. But the passing game was terrible. Play calling was not good either. That 4th and 3 end around is maybe this one will be the one where we realize that that's not going to work for us ever again. And so, yeah, I thought the play calling and the passing game specifically were just not great in this game. Dad, what did you have for negatives besides that timeout at 58 seconds?
They were only 3 out of 10 on third down. And 0 for 1 on fourth.
It's not good.
Just a cherry on top of that. 30% on third down would be second worst in the season, ahead of only Cleveland.
Ugh.
And for the season, Green Bay ended up 23rd in fourth down success at 50%. So not good overall. And they're still struggling lately with target separation, 21st in the league on the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
the last 5 or 6 games, I think they did well against New Orleans. Well, that was a disaster class for them. And I think they also did well against Seattle. But they've had some rough games for getting open lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a problem all year, realistically. And I was just double checking, what the third down conversion rate looked like with Love in. Looks like it was 1 of 4 with Love in on third downs. So it's not like it was just a Malik Willis stat.
It was like they were 3 for 3 and then they went 0 for 7.
And it's almost like you mentioned the fourth down conversion rate. It just feels like situationally, both offense and defense, although their third down defense is pretty good, but their fourth down defense is terrible. These big, the big plays, the big, gotta have it downs, they're having a tough time, just executing there. And maybe it's a lack of star power in terms of offense where it's like, hey, fourth down, who's the guy? Who do you want to put the ball in their hands, specifically in the passing game? Is it Kraft, I guess? Is he your best? Is he your go-to guy?
That's my what makes us think.
Yeah, is Kraft your go-to guy on offense?
It's
maybe
time to make Kraft your number one option.
Maybe is because you don't really have. I mean, Dobbs is, I guess, your most possession-y type receiver, but he's not like a crazy dynamic athlete, so I don't really know. And then on defense, it just feels like any fourth down and any 3rd and 3 or less just feels like that's such a tough spot to be in. It's a tough spot to be in for any defense, and then, I mean, we know all about fourth downs. They've been getting killed on fourth downs on defense all year. But yeah, for the offense, I mean, it's just tough. The receivers didn't play great in this game. Wicks had an okay game overall. It's nice to see him bounce back because they're going to need him next week. He had 6 targets, 5 catches, 49 yards. That's like pretty solid.
He's been doing better lately.
Yeah, Reed had a couple of big catches, but also had that fumble, which, good play by Jalen Johnson, but still, you can't fumble there on an end around. It's just tough stuff from the receivers.
It was like
this game.
He didn't expect Jalen Johnson to try to punch in from the side because Jalen Johnson's kind of standing there
he just
next to the path that Reed is running and just kind of it's like hitting a pedestrian who's going by. Boom! He just reaches over and punches in without even getting in front of him.
Well, I was watching it and I was like, if he doesn't punch that out, that looks like just the worst effort of all time.
It looks like an Olay.
Yeah, he just kind of let him go by him, but he did punch it out. So
the basketball defender just taking a swipe at the ball as the guy goes in for a layup.
And
except he got it.
Technique-wise, Reed does have he's holding it how you want to hold it. I think that maybe is just more about Johnson making a really good play on it, but still got to hold on to the ball. Anything else on the offensive side you wanted to touch on that was a negative? I just think the whole passing game for the last month plus has felt really disjointed, and it's a problem, and it's a shame they weren't able to get into rhythm going into the playoffs because they're going to need to be able to pass the ball next week.
Yeah, because the Eagles are really tough to run against.
They're tough
to pass against, too.
I was going to say tough to do anything against, so it would have been nice to have some rhythm.
We want to be a little sharper, yeah. And we have not been sharp. We are turning it around, and we have backslid the last couple of weeks in our sharpness.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair to say. There were still some positives on offense, though. I just wanted to touch on, I thought the running game was pretty good, despite, Jacobs only playing a little bit. 48.5% success rate on runs, which was 5th best on the week. And keep in mind, I don't know why Chicago was just not stacking the box once Malik Willis came in. We were just running over and over, and they just kept letting us run over and over. So
I think I was looking. Their stack box percentage was incredibly low.
Yeah, I was like, you guys aren't getting the memo that we're just gonna keep running it as long as Malik is. All right.
Plus, especially after he hurt his thumb.
Yeah, I was like, we're just gonna keep running it, guys. But yeah, no. So run blocking was good, really good in this game. 3.33 yards before contact per attempt, which was 3rd best on the week. Running back specifically had 28 carries for 176 yards, which was 6.3 a carry. Jacobs had 6 for 44 and a touchdown. Wilson had 14 for 73 and a touchdown, and then Brooks had 8 for 59. So a really great day for all 3 of them. And then this stat from Zach Cruz on Twitter, I thought was really interesting about Emmanuel Wilson. As the season comes to a close, he is averaging 4.9 yards per carry, which is 9th best amongst running backs with at least 100 carries, and also a success rate of 59.2% on his runs, which is 2nd in the league only to Bijan Robinson. So that, really great season from Packers' 2nd running back and 3rd running back, Brooks, having a really good year as well. But yeah, so I just wanted to, shout out Emmanuel Wilson because he had a really good game, taking on most of the work once they decided to bench Jacobs.
Yeah, and their success rate was, I didn't actually look how high it was, but they also got their best, 3rd best run blocking grade of the year for a game from PFF.
Mm-hmm.
So as a team, they had good run blocking. I had actually some notes that, you mentioned that it seemed like they had some struggle. I think maybe Rasheed Walker had one of his worst pass blocking grades.
He had a tough time. He was getting walked back a lot.
But as a group, they actually, some of the numbers don't look bad, even though they gave up 3 sacks of Malik Willis. Some of the numbers say the pass pro wasn't that bad. They gave up the slowest time to pressure on the week at 3.42 seconds, according to NFL Pro. This is better than Green Bay's average and would have led the league for the season. And was also 0.62 seconds longer than Chicago's average on defense of getting pressure. So they are actually giving up pressure more slowly to Chicago than Chicago usually gets, and would have been like the best on the league.
Yeah.
None of the offensive linemen were credited with giving up a sack by PFF. So presumably 2 of them were charged to Willis for holding the ball too long. And then one, they didn't know who to charge it to because it was a completely blown assignment as the guy just runs right into his face.
Yeah, that was...
So either the tight end
shouldn't have
the tight end should have held it longer, or maybe Tom at the right tackle was supposed to come in to the outside and pick him up.
Or maybe
the
back
chip.
Was supposed to pick him up after the chip. I think there might have been a back in there. But...
I don't think they knew who to assign that sack to.
Yeah. How did Malik Willis not see him, though? Like,
I know
it's coming right down his face. Like,
and he's looking to the left and just hits him right square in the
in
face,
the jaw,
in the chest.
and instant fumble. That what a disgustingly gross game. Also, like what an absolute disaster class of a game. But yeah, it was overall on the season, it was tied for Jordan Love's second longest time to throw at 3.22 seconds. They were, he was holding the ball back there a good amount, and they were making him hold the ball back there a good amount. I did think there were times where he could have thrown it maybe a little bit, had a guy, but tough when, also I thought the pocket was getting collapsed a little bit. Even if guys weren't losing, they were getting pushed back.
He had some where the guy was like the offensive lineman was in his lap as he tried to throw.
But still not a great game for Love in this one. I think he needs to be better if the Packers want to win this week. And I think he can be better. So hopefully there's that. Anything else on offense you wanted to touch on, Dad, or should we move on to the defensive side? Well, this was
another week where Reed was actually efficient with his targets. He was third in the league in the week on EPA per target, but he only got 2 targets on 19 routes run. So he's still not getting open enough or getting fed the ball enough. But what he does, is generally a good thing, except for the fumble.
Yeah, the targets per route run in this game, I feel like it's hard when like half the game is Malik Willis, but also his catches
with a bad thumb.
Exactly, but also his biggest catches came with Malik Willis in, so there's that also. But yeah, not a great game in the passing game, but Reed was efficient with his targets. That's true. And you said you want Tucker Kraft to be the number one option. Care to expound any more on that?
Oh, I just think Maya is like, do they need to make Tucker Kraft the number one target? He seems like he is. I should have looked up some numbers on this because there's more of a kind of a gut feeling, but does the best with the ball in his hands after the catch.
That's definitely true. Yep.
And is really good at contested catches. It seems like this is so anecdotal.
Yeah. I mean, there was the one where Jordan Love threw it to him in like triple coverage, which was, well, what happened there was, I think he thought, I rewatched all of Jordan Love's throws for this game, but he watched Jalen Johnson start to carry, I believe it was Wicks up the field as he's getting into his throwing motion, but Johnson's sitting and watching him while he's doing that. And so he's watching Love wind up, and then he falls off the guy he was carrying up the field and is immediately there, and essentially Kraft is caught between two guys, and that thing is never getting completed unless Kraft makes like a superhuman play. So yeah, I think that was something where, these defensive backs are, keeping their eyes on Love at the quarterback position a little bit more. He needs to be aware of that, but yeah.
Yeah. And but he managed to fight for the ball enough where nobody else got a hand on it. And it wasn't picked off.
Yep. Hey, play him at corner next week. We might need it. Hey, him and AJ Brown are probably physically kind of similar. But anyway, let's move on though to the defensive side of the football, Dad, and let's start talking about that, because I actually thought the defense was pretty good in this game until the end. Until this seems to be the story of the defense this year, in my opinion. The defense on the aggregate is quite good, and then in gotta have it situations, just not good at all, which maybe
it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's like any type of drive where they need to get off the field, like, against Minnesota, where you can get off the field and get the ball back and maybe drive and kick a field goal for the win. Whether it's this week where you're trying to get off the field, you're trying to hold them to, you have a lead, you're trying to let them not kick a field goal, you just give up 3rd and 11. Whether it's, Detroit with all those 4th downs, and you're just giving up touchdowns on 4th downs in both games against Detroit. I can keep going down the line. Chicago, the first game where, hey, just don't let them get into field goal range. Oh, you let them get into field goal range again, but you block the kick that time, so it kind of saves you. On and on and on. Situationally, the defense just isn't good enough. And I think that's more just probably to do with personnel. I think it's hard to situationally get big stops when you're not having a guy just win as a pass rusher, like, consistently. So I think that's probably part of it. The pass rush needs to be better. It, again, in this game was not good enough. But I don't know how you feel about the defense, Dad. It's certainly been good this year, but situationally is still frustrating to me.
Yeah, this is the discussion we've been having all year about, they give up. It seems like they can never get the stop at the end of the game to seal a win.
Yeah. And
how much of that is, the same as everybody else out there almost?
Yeah.
Except for maybe the very elite, but their overall numbers actually keep looking good.
Yeah. The numbers are good.
They played some good offenses.
The 3rd down defense is good. And then when it really comes down to, actually getting a gotta have it stop, they just haven't. And sometimes, I think it's on coaching, like that 3rd and 11 call against Chicago. That's a terrible, terrible call. Whether it's, the this is like, I don't know if you can say it's the players or if it's the, coaches. I think it's probably both for not having the players prepared, but I'm thinking about the fourth down for the Lions where Eric Wilson isn't set at the snap, and so everyone's scrambling, and so no one knows where they're supposed to be, and it's just an open touchdown for the guy coming out of the backfield, I believe it was. There's situations like that where I think it's on coaching, and then there's situations where it's like, hey, it's like you don't have a pass rush, really. It's kind of hard to do anything. So that's,
Right. When they really need it, they can just sit back there
and hold it. Yeah. But no, it's tough. I think it's, partially on the coaching, partially on, the roster. It's just so frustrating because this same exact group of pass rushers was top 6 in pressure rate last year. And you change scheme, you should still be able to win one-on-ones. I get that you're not getting as many one-on-ones, but they're just no one's winning at all. And so that's frustrating. But Dad, do you want to start with the negatives so we can end with the positives? What were some things that you
did? We want to?
I mean, we want to go into okay. What were some things that were negative?
The last regular season game. Let's
but the problem is we're ending on special teams, which good God. But anyway, negatives first on the defense.
So you talked about their third down defense of the season. However, they gave up a third down success rate of 7 out of 14.
Yeah,
and 1 of 1 on fourth down.
Yeah,
50% on third would be the second worst in the league. And on the season, Chicago was second worst in converting them at 31.8%. So you gave up a really great percentage to a team that's bad at it.
Yep, it's not good.
And coming into the game, Green Bay was the 10th best in the league at 36.6%. So they were terrible on third down. It just kind of gives the whole gotta have it sort of thing.
Yeah. And, I wanted to just highlight, I think part of that is, they also let him go 1 of 1 on fourth down. That's, that's also part of it. I did want to say, though, also that I think a lot of it can be tied back to just the pass rush not getting home. They had an average time to pressure and an average pressure rate. So it's not like the pass rush. We've seen worse games from the pass rush than they had in this game. They hadn't, but they only got 1 sack out of 11 pressures, and they routinely, the ends would crash in and Caleb Williams would escape out the side, and it happened over and over again, which is, kind of exemplified by his 3.19 seconds to throw, which was the second longest on the week. So it's, again, the pass rush was able to get pressure in this game, but they weren't able to finish, and they often let him escape, which is like the one thing that he's going to do is extend and escape out the side. So you just have to contain, and they just didn't do it in this game. So that was frustrating, even if the pass rush was marginally better in this game.
Yeah, and just not being able to finish for the sacks has been kind of a problem all year.
Yeah. Yeah, and because it's not like they're getting a lot of pressure. The pressure they're getting is often slow, and then the pressure that they're getting that is slow, they're not finishing. So it's like,
that's all.
That's all. Other than that,
I was thinking.
Yeah. But no, yeah. So the pass rush was marginally better, but yeah, overall not great. Thought the coverage at times wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, I can.
Go ahead.
I'm just looking up some numbers because I should have done this. So their average separation on the week. So just amongst defensive backs, Carrington Valentine gave up the 10th most yards of separation. Nixon gave up the 34th most, and Bullard gave up the 35 most. This is out of, a couple hundred out of 156.
It's not great.
So
it's not fantastic.
They're all in like the bottom 20th percentile in yards of separation.
Yeah, and I
think
part of that was you're getting screened a lot. Like they were calling a lot of screens for the offense for them. And, you look at – because, on the day, you look at the numbers. It's 21 of 29 for Caleb Williams for 148 yards, 5 yards an attempt. And, that's not bad on its face. You look at the dropback success rate. They were at 32.4%, which was the third worst on the week for any offense. It was even worse than the Packers dropback success rate. They had a lot of separation. I think a lot of it was screens. Overall, the defense played well until you really needed to stop, and then they didn't, is the problem. I think, overall in the day, there were some positives there, but...
Well, I think what's interesting is I was looking also at the yards of separation in coverage for the linebackers was actually really, for Wilson and Cooper, were actually really good.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a little noisy single game, but yeah, they could have been better. But I think some of the coverage things is like, okay, like they're getting a lot of checkdowns, and because I think the average depth of target for Caleb Williams in this game did not end up being particularly high. I can pull it up really quick. In terms of average air yards per attempt, Caleb Williams was at 1.9 air yards per attempt this week, which was
that's low.
Dead
last.
Yeah, super low. So I think it's partly, those separation numbers have to do with that a little bit.
I did feel like we talked about this earlier in the last couple of weeks about how much trouble the Packers were having defending the screen game.
Yeah, they've been better recently, but
right in the last 3 weeks, this week wasn't so bad. I mean, in covering it when it happened, because for a while the Bears couldn't move the ball. If we want to get into the good things.
Yeah, and you mentioned they hadn't been great in the screen game. If you look at yards after catch over expectation in Week 18, the Packers were pretty bad. They were second worst, plus 38. Kind of takes into account essentially where players are catching the ball, et cetera, et cetera. So they were giving up a good amount of yak in this game. Gave up over 100 yards after catch in this one, so that wasn't great. So it wasn't great defending the screen game in this one either. But yeah, I think for the most part they were good. Yeah, do you want to touch on positives?
Yeah, so some of the stuff I had, they only gave up 3.9 yards per play.
Yeah,
Chicago is last in the league in this, but they averaged 4.6. So it was coming into the
defense was good until they weren't.
Until they had to be.
Until they had to be, yeah. So
they gave up the 5th fewest yards per pass play and the 6th lowest EPA per pass on the week.
Mm-hmm.
In the first half, they only gave up 34 yards of offense over 5 possessions, so under 7 yards per drive, which is ridiculous.
And
that's why it was super frustrating to be behind 14-3 in the second quarter when Green Bay had only given up 10 total yards of offense. It was like
140 yards to 10, and we were down by 11. I was like, what the hell, man? That's the thing is it was you just did so many stupid things. Like the punt return touchdown, so stupid. It's just so dumb. Fumbling at your own 20
territory.
It's dumb, very stupid.
They
only got into our red zone one time.
Yeah,
and it was off the fumble.
Right, we basically almost started them in there.
Yeah.
And on defense, Gary actually had 3 what NFL Pro called quick pressures, so under 3 seconds on the week, and only 17 pass rush snaps because he didn't play a full complement of snaps in the games. The other thing about are they playing the starters to win? What is it? Which week of the preseason is this coaching style?
Yeah,
it's kind of what it looks like. And his time to pressure on average was only 2.03, which is 12th best amongst all defensive front players, regardless of snap count. So even people who only had a few.
He's going to have to really turn it on this week because it's going to be Lane Johnson and Mailata, which is a very tough matchup. But he had a solid game.
So if he can get some quick pressures like that, that'd be great.
Yeah. Hopefully he can carry some of that momentum in. I thought the run defense was really good in this game. Overall, only 3.2 yards per carry allowed, just a 38.5% rushing success rate allowed, which was 12th lowest on the week, negative 0.22 EPA per carry allowed, which was 7th best on the week. They, got there quickly, just 0.9 yards before contact per attempt, which was 11th best on the week. So less than a yard before contact per attempt. You're hitting the guys early, which is good. 2.29 yards after contact per attempt, which was the 4th lowest on the week. So you're getting guys to the ground for the most part on runs. They got gashed a couple times by Swift, but I thought for the most part, the run defense was, again, really good, which has been, for most of the year. And it's going to be a big test this coming week, which we'll be talking about later this week. But yeah, so that was my big positive for the defense is the run defense was good in this one.
Yeah, I mean, overall, especially at the beginning, you feel like we're totally shutting these guys down and we're losing. Yeah. That was one of the things that was just really frustrating in terms of a gut check watching this game. It's like, how are we losing this game? They can barely move the ball.
Yeah, and it really just came down to not getting that stand off the fumble, which is tough. It was a tough position to be put into, but you pretty much get scored on almost instantly. And
that was one of the worst plays by the defense, besides the one at the very end, where they kind of just gave up the edge.
And just letting any DJ Moore screen felt like you were in danger. Like the touchdown they had, which was a 32-yard screen to DJ Moore, is just a terrible angle from Javon Bullard. I mean, he comes down, has him lined up, and and he just goes around him. Like I don't know what happened. Yeah, it was a really poor angle taken by Bullard in that one. But yeah, for the most part, the defense was good, though, I think. Anything else that you wanted to touch on there? Should we, talk a little bit about...
Go on to our favorite part of the team.
Well, actually, I want to talk about something first.
You got more.
In this game, interesting thing, which I think is maybe the most interesting going forward, because it sounds like, per Matt LaFleur, we're not sure if Evan Williams is going to be available. Zane Anderson is still in concussion protocol. And what they had previously done in those instances is had Javon Bullard play safety, move Keyshawn Nixon to the slot, and have Stokes and Valentine play corner with Xavier McKinney still at safety. In this game, they had rookie Katano Ladapo start at safety, and he played over 80% of the snaps, played pretty well. And it was him and McKinney at safety. It had Bullard in the slot, so not moving him back to safety, trying to keep him at what has been his best position this year. And then Nixon and Valentine out wide. It's interesting because that'll probably have to be the group that they go with next week, this coming week, assuming that, Williams and Anderson are not back yet. It's going to be interesting because this was Katano Ladapo's first start of his career, really his first significant snaps of his career. And
yeah, the other two I'm looking for the season, he played 3 snaps on defense in week 15 and 15 snaps on defense in week 16.
Yeah. So he hasn't played all that much. And those snaps in week 16 were against the Saints when the game was well out of hand. So mostly garbage time. And suddenly he might be your starting safety in the first playoff game.
Yeah. He did have the team's 4th best PFF grade on defense for the week. So he had what 2 stops, 2 tackles and 2 assists with no missed tackles.
I mean, he played pretty well, but it's going to be, that's a tough ask for a guy in his second career start to go against, one of the better teams, one of the best teams in the league. And it's like, oh, good luck. And I think it's interesting because, we were having this discussion beforehand. So you think it's more of okay, we're done with Stokes. We just need to put anyone on the field that is not Stokes. I was wondering if it's okay, Bullard at safety has not been very good. He's been way better in the slot. And so we just want to keep Bullard in the slot and not deal with that. I think both are possible.
Or it could be a combination of both.
I was going to say, or if it's both, I think both are fine reasons to do that. But I just thought that was interesting. But any thoughts on, how do you feel about Oladapo potentially starting a playoff game this coming week?
It's kind of scary because we don't really know what to expect. He's hardly played. A lot of people liked him coming out of the draft, but that's ages ago.
Yeah, and that was a long time ago. He missed most of the offseason, and you're starting safety, possibly.
I mean, we felt the same way about Zane Anderson going in there. It's like, man, this guy's almost never played defense in his career.
Yeah.
But he held up.
Hopefully Oladapo can too, or Zane Anderson if he's able to, come back, or Williams if he's able to come back. Those are all just ones to keep an eye on. But yeah, I thought that was actually the most interesting thing from the defense is that we got an entirely new shuffle along the secondary. But now I guess we can move over to special teams, Dad, which is our favorite, thing to talk about, of course.
It's your favorite. Just hey, now play nice, you think is my favorite?
Yeah.
Hey, it's the special teams is your favorite.
What a disaster. I mean, they make the 55-yard kick, so we'll start with the good. Nice kick from McManus on that one.
Making kicks under pressure in the cold, in bad weather.
But how do you get rope-a-doped on a fake punt like that? I mean, it's better for it to happen in this. The only thing I can say is at least it happened in this game and not next week. But
right now they should be
pantsed.
Hopefully learn. So
how
here's
do you get pantsed on that type of play? Just look at you have no one. The problem is you have no one on your punt coverage looking for the ball. That can't happen.
I'm looking at the all 22, and all the players are flowing. Even the ones who started off on the left gunner are flowing across the field. And all of a sudden, who's 86? One of the backup tight ends. He's coming
86 is Fitzpatrick, yeah.
Fitzpatrick. He's coming in, and he's starting to cut across the field, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, the ball's over there. It's like, and then
it's
he
over.
Get held big time as he's trying to change direction there. I have to go back and look at that.
Don't care. Doesn't matter.
But the only guy who's really on the left side of the field is Wheelan, the punter. Nobody else is over there. And he's got 5 blockers surrounding him. It's the easiest punt return you'd ever see. So here's the question. Yes, it's a total failure by everybody on punt coverage to have no idea where the ball is. Was there a play call for the ball to be kicked to the right? And that's why everybody's going over there. And Whelan just totally boofed it and sent it to the left.
I mean, the punt. So let's talk about punting because Whelan's been bad for about 4 weeks. Been bad at punting. He's kicking 29-yarders out of bounds. He's kicking 40-yarders that get returned for 12 yards because they're on a line. He's kicking it into the end zone. He did it again this game. He's and it's not all on him. Matt Orzik snapping the ball over his head. We got super lucky that the ball bounced to him.
Bounced to him. He was able, and they didn't have any kind of
no rush. So he's just able to get it
so he had time to pick it up off the ground, turn around, and still punt it.
Hats tip to Whelan for that, but he's been bad. Orzik's been bad. The coverage has been bad. The punt team is a disaster right now. What is going on?
I mean, we did say recently that just go ahead and punt it into the end zone because we've been hitting these 29-yarders.
Well, and to highlight the punt coverage, last week, you had a guy completely muff a punt, but because no one on the punt coverage team got down there, you didn't punish them at all for it. So yeah, the punting has been just a disaster. I can't wait for one. The only thing left is to get one block next week. I hate putting it out there, but that's bingo. If you hit that, that's bingo. Like, there's nothing else left for them to F up.
Everything else is covered.
Ugh.
Yeah,
but no, they need to. Yeah, please no. They need to focus on whatever is going on with the punt team right now, because it's just been a mess for about 4 weeks. I would say 4 solid weeks of being a mess on punt.
Short punts out of bounds, bad coverage, yuck.
Trifecta. Yeah, exactly. Bad snaps. You forgot bad snaps.
Bad snaps. But at least on this time on Whelan's touchback, it was a 60-yard punt. Yeah, that's better than a 29-yarder.
No, that's fine.
By 11 yards.
I mean, it's like a net 40-yarder, but yeah.
I was actually calling for some of those on some of those short punts the last 2 weeks.
Just kick it away. It's fine. Kick returns. They had the one where it was like, I thought the guy was wide open to just keep going to the right, and then he decided to end around it. When they decided to pitch it back to the guy heading into the coverage, I was like, thank God, because I'm pretty sure that first guy could have gotten to the 50.
At the end of the game?
Yeah. I was like, oh, thank goodness. I think kick coverage has been
I was also like, waste more time, because you're not really on a last play of the game scenario.
Yeah. But yeah, no. Anything else on special teams? I mean, good kick from 55. Bisaccia, it sounds like, talked LaFleur into taking that one, and that paid off. But yeah, they got to figure out what's going on with the punt team right now.
Yeah, I was like, they started talking, and it was like, I'm wondering, is Bisaccia saying, why did you just call that timeout?
It's like, yeah, it's just kick the field goal. Yeah, but anyway, let's move on to our last section, though, Dad. Player of the game. Let's wrap this thing up. Who'd you have in this one?
So I decided to give Sean Ryan a shout out. He had his best run blocking grade of the year by PFF and his second best pass blocking grade of the year. He led the team in pass blocking grade on the week, and he gave up no pressures.
Yeah, he had a solid game. I went with Emmanuel.
I was kind of invisible, Wilson. Which sometimes is what you want.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yep. I'd rather not hear my guards' names for the most part. I went with Emmanuel Wilson. Just a really solid day in claim duty, and just to highlight I think in some ways under-recognized season. He's been
a quietly really good year.
Quietly really good year for him. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. And he's been good anytime he's had to come in and do mop-up duty. He's been good as a bit of a change-up. He's been good running the ball. He's been decent catching the ball. He's had a good year, and he had a good game in this one again. But any final things you want to leave our listeners with as we close out the regular season for the Packers? And, later this week, look forward to the playoffs.
Oh, do I have any words of wisdom?
I know you don't, so we can just keep going. All right. Let's wrap
just because I was surprised by the question. I was like, wait, what?
But anyway.
Also because I'm looking up data as you're talking. It's like, oh, Tommy's talking. This could take a while. I can look up something new.
I got time. I got 8 minutes. But anyway, we are here.
So I would say let's just how about some mistake-free football, which is like all we really wanted from this game.
Yeah, exactly. We just wanted, in this past game, we just wanted to build momentum. Right now, the Packers are, I would say, moving in the wrong direction momentum-wise, but it only takes one game to flip it the other way. So check us out later this week. We'll be talking about this upcoming matchup against the Eagles for the Packers, wild card, first game of the playoffs, hopefully not last game of the playoffs. So go ahead and check that out. We'll be previewing that later this week. Thank you again for listening. If you like what you heard, please follow us on either, Twitter or Blue Sky at Father Son Packer. We tweet out, injury reports, roster moves, et cetera, one-stop shopping for everything Titletown. Subscribe, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Leave a review, leave a comment. We would really appreciate it. Help us our numbers. But yeah, check us out later this week for that preview. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.